James Coburn names the Golden Age actors who were shockingly cruel in real life. To understand why one of Hollywood's most celebrated cool men would later lift the curtain on the darker truths of his industry, we must first travel back to where his story began. James Harrison Coburn III was born on August 31st, 1928, in the quiet town of Laurel, Nebraska. He was the son of James Coburn II, a garage mechanic and machinist, and Milett Johnson, a homemaker of Swedish descent. His heritage was a blend of Scottish and Swedish roots, and his early years reflected the plain-spoken resilience of Midwestern families during the Great Depression. Life was modest, sometimes harsh, but it instilled in young James a toughness that never left him. When he was still a boy, the family moved west to Compton, California. At the time, Compton was far from the rough image it would later develop. It was a community of working families trying to find stability, and for the Coburns, it represented opportunity. Growing up in California meant James was only miles away from Hollywood, though it seemed as remote as another world. James attended Compton Junior College, where he first discovered a love of performing through public speaking and debate. Yet his path to acting was interrupted by global events. Like so many young men of his generation, he was called into service during World War II. Coburn joined the U.S. Army, where he worked as a truck driver and later as a technician overseas. Though not a combat hero, the discipline and experience broadened his worldview and gave him the quiet confidence he would later channel on screen. Returning home after the war, James was restless. He enrolled at Los Angeles City College, initially studying business and speech. A chance encounter with stage productions rekindled his interest in performance, and before long, he was attending acting workshops. He eventually studied with the legendary Stella Adler in New York, whose emphasis on emotional truth and character depth left a permanent mark on him. Adler pushed him to dig beneath the surface, to find humanity even in the most hardened roles. Physically, Coburn was striking. 6 feet 2 inches tall, lean, with angular cheekbones and a dazzling, toothy grin. His voice was gravelly yet magnetic, carrying authority even in silence. Teachers quickly saw that he possessed something rare, not just talent but presence. Acting gave him direction and identity, a way to channel both his discipline from the Army and his innate charisma. By the mid-1950s, James Coburn had committed to making acting his life's work. He started humbly, taking on stage roles, small television appearances, and bit parts in westerns. The boy from Nebraska had begun a journey that would take him into the heart of Hollywood's shifting landscape. And while he would later reveal shocking truths about the cruelty behind the glamour, in these early days, he was simply a young man chasing a dream. Coburn's early years in the industry were defined by persistence. Television was booming in the late 1950s, and the young actor found steady if unspectacular work in shows like Dragnet, The Rifleman, and Wagon Train. He was often cast as outlaws, soldiers, or mysterious strangers. Hollywood hadn't yet figured out where he fit, but Coburn used every opportunity to sharpen his timing, movement, and screen magnetism. His breakthrough arrived in 1960, when director John Sturges cast him in The Magnificent Seven. Playing Britt, the knife-throwing gunslinger, Coburn had minimal dialogue, yet his athletic grace and intense gaze made him unforgettable. Sharing the screen with Yul Brynner, Steve McQueen, and Charles Bronson, Coburn stood out through sheer presence. The film became a worldwide sensation and launched him into the ranks of rising stars. Throughout the 1960s, Coburn built a reputation as one of Hollywood's most effortlessly cool actors. He worked again with Steve McQueen in Hell's for Heroes, 1962, and charmed audiences in Charade, 1963, where he acted alongside Cary Grant and Audrey Hepburn, though not yet a headliner. He developed a reputation as a scene stealer, an actor who could command attention even in ensemble casts. The defining moment of his stardom came in Our Man Flint in 1966, and its sequel in Like Flint, 1967. As super spy Derek Flint, Coburn embodied a playful, satirical take on the James Bond archetype. His tall frame, sardonic wit, and unflappable confidence resonated with audiences worldwide. The films were box office successes and cemented his status as a leading man. For many, Coburn became the very definition of 1960s cool, stylish, self-assured, and slightly dangerous. Yet success carried complications. Hollywood increasingly typecast him as the smooth rogue or action hero. Coburn longed for meatier, dramatic roles that would showcase his depth. Some opportunities arose, such as Duck, You Sucker, 1971, directed by Sergio Leone, where he played an explosives expert during the Mexican Revolution. He also collaborated with director Sam Peckinpah in Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, 1973, and later in the brutal war film Cross of Iron, 1977. These roles allowed him to demonstrate grit and complexity beyond the suave persona. The 1970s also brought challenges. Coburn suffered from severe rheumatoid arthritis, which at times left him nearly incapacitated. The illness restricted his movement and limited the action roles for which he was best known. Work slowed, and some critics wondered if his career might fade. But Coburn reinvented himself. In the 1980s and 1990s, he embraced character roles, often portraying stern mentors, villains, or enigmatic figures. His crowning achievement came in Affliction, 1997, directed by Paul Schrader. Playing an abusive, alcoholic father opposite Nick Nolte, Coburn delivered a chilling performance that earned him the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. It was vindication, proof that he was more than a stylish leading man. He was a true actor of depth and power. From humble television beginnings to Oscar glory, James Coburn's career was a story of resilience, reinvention, and an indelible cool that defined an era. Away from the cameras, James Coburn lived a life of passion, friendship, and at times, turbulence. His personal relationships were as layered as the roles he played. In 1959, Coburn married Beverly Kelly, an actress and songwriter. Their union lasted 2 decades, during which they welcomed a son, James H. Coburn IV, born in 1961. Though he grew up in the shadow of his famous father, James IV largely avoided the spotlight, pursuing career behind the scenes rather than in front of the camera. By most accounts, Coburn was a devoted father, though the demands of fame and the strains of his marriage eventually led to divorce in 1979. Following his first marriage, Coburn embraced bachelorhood with gusto. He was linked to several actresses and social figures, though he rarely indulged gossip. Colleagues often described him as magnetic at parties, yet grounded in conversation. His tall frame and commanding voice drew attention, but friends insisted he valued sincerity above glamour in his private life. In 1993, Coburn found lasting companionship when he married Paula O'Hara, a former model and actress. This marriage, unlike his first, was characterized by stability. Friends and colleagues noted that Paula brought calm to his later years, helping him manage the chronic pain of arthritis and supporting him through career highs and lows. The two remained together until his death, a partnership remembered for its warmth and loyalty. Coburn's circle extended far beyond romance. He forged deep friendships with some of Hollywood's most legendary figures. His bond with Steve McQueen was particularly close. The two shared a love of fast cars, motorcycles, and adventure. Coburn was also a devoted student and friend of Bruce Lee, training under him in martial arts. Lee's philosophy of discipline and flow not only kept Coburn active during his battle with arthritis, but also reshaped his outlook on life. Through these friendships, Coburn became a central figure in Hollywood's inner circles of the 1960s and 1970s, a man respected not only for his talent, but for his authenticity. He was admired for never taking himself too seriously, despite his fame. Though he had only one biological child, Coburn's role as a mentor was legendary. Younger actors often sought his advice, and he was known to share candid stories about the realities of the industry. He spoke with humor, but never sugar-coated the difficulties of fame. His personal life was not without challenges. Arthritis often left him in excruciating pain, and he sought relief through alternative medicine, diet, and martial arts. At times, the illness tested his resilience, but he fought it with the same determination he brought to his career. In the end, Coburn's private life reflected his screen persona. Cool, charismatic, but layered with depth and humanity. He lived with passion, forged lasting relationships, and navigated both triumphs and struggles with grace. This revelation did not come during the height of his stardom, but in reflective moments later in his life, when Coburn spoke candidly about what he had witnessed in Hollywood. After decades of speculation about the darker sides of Hollywood's golden age, Coburn offered confirmation. Behind the dazzling smiles and carefully crafted images, cruelty often lurked. They were gods on the screen, he remarked to friends, but some of them were devils when the camera stopped. Coburn was not a gossip. He shared these insights with a sense of gravity, not malice. He spoke of actors and actresses who treated subordinates with disdain, who belittled co-stars, or who inflicted harm on those closest to them. The list, as he described it, numbered around 20, a mix of celebrated legends and lesser-known stars. Among them, Coburn pointed to Joan Crawford, remembered for her icy discipline in films like Mildred Pierce, but infamous in private for her harshness toward family and rivals. He cited Errol Flynn, beloved for his swashbuckling roles, but notorious for reckless and predatory behavior. Even John Wayne, the icon of rugged American masculinity, was described by Coburn as a man whose temper and domineering presence could cross into cruelty. Coburn recalled studio environments where stars wielded unchecked power. Some sabotaged colleagues to secure roles, others demeaned crew members who lacked the status to fight back. The cruelty was not always physical. Sometimes it was emotional, subtle, and corrosive, yet the effect was lasting, leaving scars on those who worked in the shadows of Hollywood's golden icons. What shocked listeners was not merely the naming of names, but the candid way Coburn framed it. He did not relish exposing the flaws of the famous. Instead, he sought to tell the truth, to remind audiences that the golden age was not golden for everyone. Behind the glamour, some suffered under the weight of egos, tempers, and unchecked power. His reflections resonated because they came from a man admired for his generosity. Coburn himself was rarely accused of cruelty. He was remembered as approachable and collegial. His revelations, then, were not self-serving but honest. They carried the weight of someone who had lived through the era, who had seen both brilliance and brutality firsthand. For fans, the notion that beloved stars could also be cruel was deeply unsettling. For Coburn, it was cathartic. In his own words, he believed myths should never erase reality. The industry he loved was built on both light and shadow, and by naming the cruel, he honored the countless others, actors, crew, and family, who bore the cost of Hollywood delusions. In his later years, James Coburn embraced a quieter rhythm of life. Though he continued working in films throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, he also spent more time at home with Paula O'Hara, enjoying a piece that had eluded him in his younger days. He lent his distinctive voice to projects such as Monsters, Incorporated, 2001, where he played the duplicitous Henry J. Waternoose, reminding audiences that even in animation, his gravitas was unmistakable. Despite years of battling arthritis, Coburn remained active through martial arts, meditation, and alternative medicine. Friends remarked on his resilience, noting that even in pain, he exuded calm confidence. He remained a fixture in Hollywood's social life, admired for his wit and candor. On November 18, 2002, Coburn's story came to a sudden close. He suffered a fatal heart attack at his Beverly Hills home. He was 74 years old. His death shocked colleagues and fans alike, for while his health struggles were known, his passing felt abrupt. Tributes poured in. Nick Nolte praised him as a true gentleman, while Mel Gibson remembered his generosity and humor. Though gone, Coburn's legacy endures. His career spanned more than 4 decades, from television westerns to international stardom, from super spy parodies to Oscar-winning drama. He embodied the shifting eras of Hollywood, always adapting, always cool. But beyond the films, his candid reflections about Hollywood's golden age remain part of his story. By naming the cruelty he had witnessed, Coburn left a valuable record. He reminded the world that stardom often masked humanity, and that truth was sometimes more compelling than myth. In doing so, he gave voice to those overlooked in the glitz. The crew, the co-stars, the families who endured the darker side of fame. His cool demeanor, his razor-sharp grin, and his gravelly voice made him unforgettable. Yet it was his honesty, both in art and in life, that truly set him apart. In a world built on illusion, James Coburn remained authentic. Today, when audiences revisit The Magnificent Seven, laugh at the swagger of our man Flint, or shudder at his Oscar-winning cruelty and affliction, they encounter a performer who gave everything to his craft. They also encounter a man who lived with courage, not only in facing illness and career obstacles, but in speaking uncomfortable truths about the industry he loved. James Harrison Coburn III, soldier, actor, friend, husband, and truth-teller, remains one of Hollywood's most enduring figures. His story teaches us that legends are built not only on style or fame, but on the rare courage to reveal the world as it truly is. And so, the boy from Laurel, Nebraska, left behind not just roles and awards, but a lesson. Behind every golden screen lies a human story, full of brilliance, shadow, and truth.